There is a voice inside you. It does not speak with courage. It does not speak with wisdom, and yet you listen. It questions your dreams, shadows your decisions, and mocks the whisper of desire that stirs in your soul. You are not enough. You are too late. You will fail. That voice is not yours, but you have mistaken it for truth, and because of that tragic error, you have doubted what was divine in you. You have delayed your destiny, defended your limitations, and dimmed the fire that was meant to blaze through the darkness. But hear me now. You were not born to cower in the shadows of imagined defeat. You were not made to shrink, to stall, to obey a phantom tyrant in your own mind. No man can conquer the world until he has conquered the whisper. And today we go to war with it. Not with fists, not with fury, but with clarity, with command, with the quiet, irreversible realization that the critic within you is a fraud. You are not what it says you are. And by the end of this lecture, you will no longer be its prisoner. You will be the one who speaks. And when you speak, the world will move. Before a man can rise, he must first look downward, into himself. Not to find weakness, but to identify the chains. Because what binds most men is not visible. It is not steel, it is not stone, it is thought. Undisciplined, unquestioned, unexamined thought, accepted as gospel. The greatest enemy of success is not ignorance. It is the illusion of truth, falsehoods parading as wisdom. Voices repeated so many times that you no longer hear them. You become them. There is a voice inside you, yes. But I ask you now, who placed it there? Did it come from your Creator? From the boundless source of strength, courage, and divine intelligence? Or did it come from fear? From the trembling hands of adults who had long since stopped believing in their own power? From teachers who taught you to memorize but never to think? From failure, not your own, but inherited from the world's low expectations? You were not born with doubt. No child enters the world afraid to speak, afraid to dance, afraid to reach. Fear is not a trait, it is a training. And somewhere along the line, you were trained. Trained to pause when you should act, to analyze when you should leap, to fit in when you were built to stand out, trained to silence your soul in order to please the frightened masses. And now, this voice, this clever mimic, sits upon a throne it did not earn. It makes decisions. It sets your goals. It cancels your dreams before they ever leave your lips. And worst of all, you believe it is you. But listen carefully. You are not the voice. You are the one who hears it. And just because you hear it does not mean you must obey it. For the voice is not brave. It has never taken a risk. It has never bled. It has never dared. It only survives if you stay small. It feeds on hesitation. It grows fat on indecision. And every time you bow to it, it whispers, "See, I was right." But it is not right. It never was. You are not the whisper. You are the roar it's trying to silence. And that roar is not gone. It is buried beneath years of conditioning, beneath disappointment, beneath the mask you wear to keep others comfortable. But I did not come to speak to your mask. I came to speak to the man beneath it, the one who remembers, the one who still feels the ache to become, the one who knows there is more power, more depth, more fire waiting to be unleashed. And so today we strip away the lie, layer by layer, fear by fear, falsehood by falsehood, until what remains is not perfect, but pure, not flawless, but true. And from that place, you will rise, not as an improved version of who the world told you to be, but as the original version of who you were before the world interfered. Now listen closely, for what comes next will be uncomfortable, not because it is cruel, but because it is honest. The inner critic is not a symptom, it is a strategy. It is the mind's misguided attempt to protect you from pain by keeping you from progress. But progress is life, and anything that stops it, even in the name of safety, is the enemy of your soul, and that enemy is about to be unmasked. Let us begin. Let us begin with a question so simple, and yet so devastating in its implications. Who told you that you weren't enough? Was it a parent, frightened, bitter, worn down by their own unfulfilled ambitions? Was it a teacher, impatient, tired, eager to silence your spark so their day might pass a little easier? Was it a stranger, a classmate, a friend, a failure, a moment? And more importantly, why did you believe them? You were not born to doubt. You were not born to criticize your every move, to second-guess every desire, to withhold every word that dared to be bold. Number. You learned that. You learned it in the pauses, in the sighs, in the punishments that followed your joy, in the mocking glances when you spoke with too much excitement, in the red pen marks across your dreams. And slowly that learning became living. At first, the voice was outside of you, but over time it found its way in. It used repetition, it used pain, it used silence, and eventually, you began to hear it in your own voice. I shouldn't speak up. I'm not that kind of person. People like me don't succeed. I always mess things up. You repeated the voice long enough that it no longer sounded like someone else. It sounded like you. And that is the great tragedy of the inner critic. It wears your face. It speaks with your tongue. It convinces you that fear is intelligence and caution is maturity. But let us pull back the curtain. Let us look at this thing for what it really is. It is a program, an echo, a recording from the past. It is the nervous system reacting to what was, not what is. You see, the mind is a brilliant machine. It records everything. It catalogs pain. It remembers rejection. And it builds a map designed to protect you. But in protecting you from risk, it imprisons you from growth. Your inner critic is not evil. It is not malicious. It is misguided. It believes its job is to keep you safe, even if that means keeping you small. And because it has been doing that job for so long, you have stopped questioning it. But I will question it. And so must you. Is it really your voice that says you will fail? Or is it your mother's anxiety, your father's fear, your teacher's disapproval, your ex-lover's judgment, your own fear of being fully seen? Trace it back. Can you find a moment, perhaps buried in the basement of your memory, when that voice first spoke, when it first said, "Don't try that. Stay quiet"? That's not for people like you. Find it. Feel it. Because if you can find its roots, you can remove its power. A lie loses its strength the moment you remember it is not yours. That voice, the one that doubts, delays, diminishes, is not your soul. It is a character, scripted by fear, voiced by history, rehearsed in your mind. And I say again, you are not the voice. You are the one who hears it. You are the witness. You are the chooser. You are the creator. And the moment you step back just one step and ask, is this me or is this the voice? You create space, and in that space is freedom. You see, the voice only has one weapon, confusion. It thrives when you cannot tell the difference between fear and wisdom. So let me tell you the difference. Fear screams. Wisdom whispers. Fear is urgent. Wisdom is calm. Fear tells you to wait. Wisdom tells you to act in spite of fear. You were born with wisdom. The fear was added later, and what was added can be removed, but not by accident, not by passivity, not by hoping it fades. It must be confronted, spoken to, unmasked. And once you see the voice for what it is, you'll no longer kneel to it. You'll no longer mistake it for insight. You'll no longer obey a ghost. You'll rise, you'll act, you'll speak, and this time it will be you speaking. Not the critic, not the past, not the program, you. And once you speak, the world will respond differently. Because when the true voice of a man is heard, not the conditioned echo, not the fearful whisper, but the deep, original, God-given tone of his being, the world cannot help but move. Doors open, opportunities appear, people listen. Not because you are louder, but because you are clearer. Because your words no longer drip with hesitation, but carry the force of someone who has returned to himself. That is the secret the critic does not want you to know. That its power lies not in its strength, but in your silence. For every time you do not challenge it, you cast another vote in its favor. But now you see it. You have peeled back the veil. And once the illusion is shattered, there is no going back. You cannot unhear this. You cannot unknow it. You are not the voice. You are the one who hears. And from this day forward, you will decide what stays and what must be cast out. Because you have work to do, dreams to build, a life to live, and the critic has no seat at that table. Now, let us turn to its favorite trick, its oldest tool, the weapon that has stolen more destinies than war, poverty, and death combined: delay. The critic does not always shout. No, that would be too obvious, too easy to spot. Instead, it whispers something far more dangerous. Wait. Wait until you're more ready. Wait until the timing is better. Wait until you feel more confident. Wait until you're certain. But that wait has no end. It is a desert without water, a door without a handle, a promise that tomorrow will be easier, when in truth, tomorrow is only harder. And every time you choose delay, you strengthen the critic. You sharpen its blade. You tell it, yes, you may lead. And so it does. Not with chains, but with calendars. Not with war cries, but with reason. You've heard it before? I just need a little more time. Once I figure everything out. Once the kids are older. Once I get this one thing in place. Someday. But someday is a word carved in tombstones. It is the soft kill. The slow erosion of everything you could have become. Understand this. The inner critic doesn't need to stop you. It only needs to slow you. A man who moves slowly will still call himself a dreamer, while decades slip through his fingers. He will say, I'm working on it, I'm planning it, I'm getting there. But inside, he knows. He knows the clock is ticking and his courage is shrinking. He knows he's not preparing. He's hiding, not strategizing, stalling, not waiting, withering. And still, the voice says, just a little longer. Be smart, be safe. Don't risk too much, but what about the cost of waiting? Who counts that? Who tallies up the years lost to hesitation? The relationships never formed, the art never made, the business never started, the strength never built, the boldness never felt. Safety is not free. Delay is not neutral. Every time you choose to wait, something within you dies quietly. And the critic nods, pleased. It will not punish you. It doesn't need to. It lets time do the work. But time is not your servant. Time is your test. It asks only one question. Will you move? And if you do not, if you delay, stall, defer, postpone, then time does not sympathize. It moves on. And one day you look back and see the trail behind you. Not a path of bold attempts, but a graveyard of almost. Almost said it. Almost tried. Almost launched. Almost lived. Almost. The critic loves almost. It is his favorite word. He will let you dream all day, so long as you never dare. Because dreaming without action is safe, sterile, ineffective. It feels good, but it changes nothing. And that is how the critic survives. By turning powerful men into passive thinkers, by replacing action with intention, desire with delay, courage with contemplation. But I ask you now, are you tired of thinking about your potential? Would you not rather feel it, move through it, become it? Because you will never think your way into a new life. You must act your way there. And action is the one thing the critic cannot survive. It hates movement. It hates decisiveness. It hates the sound of your boots on the path. Because when you move, even with doubt, even imperfectly, the voice grows weaker. Why? Because the critic feeds on control, and nothing shatters its control like action. Every step you take without permission is a rebellion. Every bold move without consensus is a declaration. Every risk taken without full certainty is a sword through its heart. That is how you beat it. Not by waiting until you're fearless, but by acting while fear is still speaking. Let it talk. You move. Let it warn. You move. Let it threaten. You move. And soon the voice, once thunderous, becomes a whisper, then an echo, then silence. And in that silence you will hear something else. Not fear, not doubt, not delay, but direction, clarity, conviction. The voice of the man you were before the world made you wait. He is still there. He has always been there, and he is ready to lead. So the critic delays, but the soul decides. And when the soul decides, the world begins to rearrange, not later, not someday. Now, because the moment you act, you no longer belong to the voice. You belong to the fire. And once you begin to move, the question no longer becomes, what do I do next? But why did I ever believe I couldn't? That is the root. not in the moment of hesitation, but in the identity beneath it. For the critic is not just a voice, it is a belief system, a silent contract signed in childhood, a lie repeated until it felt like truth. And if you want to be free, you cannot just silence the voice. You must unlearn who you were told to be. Because long before the voice began to speak, a belief had already taken root. Not one you chose, not one you questioned, but one you absorbed. That is how the subconscious mind is formed, not by logic, but by repetition, by emotion, by the words spoken when you were most open, most tender, most trusting. As a child, you lived in a trance, wide-eyed, absorbing everything. You heard things once and believed them forever. Be careful. Don't get your hopes up. People like us don't get ahead. Dreams don't pay the bills. Who do you think you are? They weren't teaching you. They were programming you. And what gets programmed early becomes the operating system for life. Not because it's right, not because it's helpful, but because it's familiar. And so you move through the world, brilliant, gifted, filled with potential, but still asking permission from a childhood that never understood who you were. That is the critic's true origin. It is not just a voice, it is an identity, a lens through which you view yourself. And that lens is warped. You think, I am not confident. I am indecisive. I just doubt myself sometimes. But no, my friend, that's not your personality, that's your conditioning. The world labeled you before you could name yourself, and you have been answering to that name ever since. But now it is time to remember, you are not your thoughts. You are the one who chooses them. You are not your beliefs. You are the builder of belief. And if what was built can be built, it can be rebuilt. How? By the same mechanism that created the critic, auto-suggestion. The world used it on you first, without knowing it, without meaning to, but relentlessly. Every repeated phrase, every emotional moment, every time someone reacted to you with shame, fear, or guilt, it etched a new line into the subconscious. And the subconscious, once etched, does not argue. It obeys. It follows the pattern until death or disruption. And now it must be disrupted. But listen closely, because this is where most fail. They try to think their way into a new life. They try to argue with the inner critic. They try to overpower it with logic. But logic is not what built the critic. Emotion did, repetition did, experience did. And so to break it, you must speak to the subconscious in its own language. You must give it new words, new emotion, new images, new instructions, and repeat them like your life depends on it. Because it does. Auto-suggestion is not just a technique. It is a law. Whatever the subconscious hears often enough, it believes. And once it believes, it builds. That is why fear has such a strong foundation in so many lives, because it was repeated early and reinforced often. But what if you turned the same tool toward truth, toward power, toward the man you choose to be? Then you are no longer a prisoner of your past. You are the author of your future. You can plant new roots, not from fear, but from desire, not from trauma, but from purpose. And that purpose must become your obsession. It must be emotionalized. It must be spoken aloud. It must be written daily, breathed daily, declared daily, and until the old voice no longer fits. Because that is what happens when a man discovers who he really is. He outgrows the voice. He no longer needs to silence it. He simply rises above it. And when he does, everything changes. Because your subconscious is not trying to hurt you. It is trying to obey you. It just doesn't know who's in charge. And until you stand tall, with certainty, and speak, this is who I am now. This is what I believe now. This is the standard I accept now. The subconscious will continue running the old program, not out of malice, but momentum. But you can interrupt momentum. You can choose again. You can speak louder. You can speak clearer. And in that moment, the ground will shift. Your actions will change. Your results will change. Your emotions will follow. And slowly, the inner critic, once a tyrant, becomes nothing more than a whisper in the wind. You nod to it, but you do not bow. You hear it, but you do not halt. You acknowledge its presence, but you do not grant it power. Because now your subconscious belongs to a new voice, one that speaks in vision, in truth, in command, and that voice is yours. But do not stop here. To step into that voice fully, you must act. And now, I will show you how. Now we turn from understanding to command. Because knowledge is not power, applied knowledge is. You have seen the voice for what it is. You have traced its roots, unmasked its disguise, and exposed its script. But still it lingers, still it whispers, still it waits for you to forget. So what do? You act, not someday, not when you feel more confident, not when everything is perfect. Now, the inner critic cannot be reasoned with. It cannot be negotiated with. It cannot be politely asked to leave. It must be displaced, overruled, replaced. Here is how. First, give it a name. Not me, not my voice. Give it a name. Call it what it is. Fear, doubt, the saboteur, the echo, the imposter, the ghost. Why? Because what you name, you separate. And what you separate, you can disempower. When the voice speaks, you must now say, that is not me. That is the ghost. That is not truth. That is programming. And then, you must speak back. Yes, speak, aloud, with authority. I hear you, but you do not command me. I am not your creation. You are mine, and I unmake you. Second, write it down. Write the words the critic says to you, all of them, line by line. Get them out of the shadows. Put them on the page. Then, beside every lie, write the truth. Not a gentle truth, not a passive truth, a commanding truth. If the voice says, you always mess things up, you write, I'm a man of progress. I grow stronger with every step I take. If it says, no one cares what you have to say, you write, my words are forged from purpose. They will be heard. You rewrite the script. And every time the old voice appears, you read the new one, aloud. Because the subconscious listens most to repetition and emotion. Third, create your daily declaration. A sentence, a paragraph, a battle cry, a statement of identity, of destiny, of absolute non-negotiable truth. And you repeat it every morning, before the world speaks. Before the critic has a chance to crawl back in, you speak it first. You set the tone. You take the throne. Something like, I am the architect of my mind. I choose the thoughts I believe. I move with power. I act with courage. I speak with purpose. I do not ask permission. I do not wait for confidence. I decide who I am, and I prove it with action. You do this daily, not when you feel like it, not when things are going well, especially when they are not, because every time you declare, you weaken the critic's grip. And fourth, act immediately. Every time the critic says wait, you do the thing. Every time it says hide, you speak. Every time it says plan, you move. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be huge. It just has to be done. Because action rewires the mind faster than thought. Action tells the body, we are no longer afraid. And when the body knows, the mind will follow. This is the warpath. Not of violence, not of noise, but of decision, of daily command. You no longer wake up and hope for silence. You wake up and speak first. You take control. You set the tone. Because silence is not the goal. Power is, conviction is, clarity is, and clarity comes from doing what you said you would do, in spite of the voice. So now, you know what must be done. Name it, write it, replace it, declare it, act on it, and do it again tomorrow, until the new voice is louder, until it is natural, until you no longer wonder if you're enough, because your life proves it. The critic cannot survive a man who moves, and from this day forward, you move. The critic cannot survive a man who moves, and from this day forward, you move. Not in fear, not in waiting, not in negotiation with doubt. You move with conviction, with clarity, with fire, and with every step the voice grows smaller until one day you will hear it and smile, not in fear, not in anger, but in recognition, because you'll know it never ruled you. It only echoed the parts of you that had not yet stood up, but now you stand. And that is all it ever took. So now the voice is fading, and something else is rising to take its place. The truth. Let us speak it. The truth is this. You were never broken. You were buried, under fear, under noise, under the voices of people who had long since forgotten their own power, but the flame never left you. It dimmed, yes, but it did not die, and now it rises. You no longer need permission. You no longer wait for the voice to disappear. You no longer negotiate with ghosts. You decide. You decide who you are. You decide what you believe. You decide what you do next, not the critic, not the past, not the fear. You're not fragile. You're forged. You're not confused. You're becoming clear. You're not lost. You're returning to the man you were before the voice took hold, to the self that knew, even in silence, I was meant for more. You were never too late. You were never too much. You were never the problem. You were simply trained to forget what you were. But now you remember, and that memory is power. The critic will still whisper, but it will whisper into the wind because you have work to do. You have people to love. You have words to speak. You have mountains to climb. You have a life to claim. And no voice, no matter how practiced, how persistent, how familiar, can stand in your way once you decide. So decide, stand, step, speak, building, move. The world is not waiting for the version of you that's perfect. It's waiting for the version that is true. And when that man shows up, unapologetic, unshaken, unmistakably himself, the world will not resist him. It will rearrange for him, because the throne was never empty. It was only unattended, and now you have returned. The critic does not rule here. It never did. You rule. You choose. You speak. And when you speak, the world will move, because you are no longer the echo. You are the voice, and that voice is final.